the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, because I know you know Tuesday that Reverend Billy Kyles passed away.
No, I did not. No.
Oh, you didn't? Yes.
No.
In Memphis.
Yeah. No.
And if you can tell the audience his role in the assassination.
Well, if you could, if the people who have the type of equipment you need to Google, I'm going to tell you what happened, but you need to see this for yourself. I had never heard of Billy Kyles, okay? I knew he was going somewhere to dinner, but I didn't know it was at his house. Then a black man, Reginald Eves, became police chief of Atlanta. So Reginald called me and he said, man, I need to talk to you one day. And I said, well, I can fly in, today. We can meet today. And so he said, man, how can I tell you how much I love you and how much people love you and the information you have? But I just thought everything you were saying about King was wrong. And so my love and likeness for you, I took 7 detectives, gave them a budget, and told them to go into Memphis and bring me back some information, because I got a friend of mine I want to show it to. And they did. And then he called me and he said, man, you need to get in here quick. So I go in and he told me, he said, first I want to apologize to you. He said, I never believed none of that you were saying. And because of who you are and our friendship, I took 7 homicide detectives and sent them into Memphis. And here's the reports they brought back. And then that's when Reverend Kyle's name was mentioned. He said they was going by his house for dinner. And he said when he got there to interview him, somebody had sent him to South America. He said, but we did find out that after King was killed, that he ends up with the ownership of $7 million worth of housing projects. But we never got to talk to him. And then we found out that King was going to his house, and he said to King, one thing my wife hates, man, is for her macaroni and cheese to get cold. So then after that, he said, so what do you mean? He says, well, we're supposed to have dinner at 6 o'clock, and we'd like to change it to 5 o'clock. Well, we found out later they wanted 5 o'clock because it wasn't totally dark, and the shooters would get a better shot. And so then he told me some other things, and then he said that he's going to hold a press conference and announce this. And then I noticed the next day he didn't have a press conference.
1 minute.
And then right after that, he got indicted, the police chief. Okay. So now, I'm looking, and we knew the bullet didn't come from the top of the building. We knew the next day, for some reason, I don't know how the New York Times, as crooked as they are, said there was a tree that had been dug up that night, which means,
Right. Hold that thought right there. We're using radio vision now, and thank you for being so descriptive. Folks, our guest is D.Gregory. We're going to get to Prince in a moment, but a major story coming out with the death of Martin Luther King. A major player has passed away, so Greg's going to fill us in next after the traffic and weather on 1450 WOL, where information is power. Thanks for staying with us and our guest, social activist D.Gregory, and we're going to talk about Prince because a lot of inconsistencies in Prince's death, and Greg's going to get to that. But a major player in the assassination of Dr. King just passed away, and Greg's been pointing this particular figure out, and his name is Reverend Billy Kyles. So, Greg, before we left for the traffic, you tell us about a tree. Was a tree at the Lorraine Motel?
That was in the way that it came from the second floor. It would have been impossible The New York Times, the day after, which was April the 5th, the New York Times, gave the article, had the article about a tree was missing and how they'd gone in there and cleaned up the grounds and everything. This was the mayor and the trash department. So now to get back to, so I had no idea. I did know this. I went in and then interviewed people. Now, when the shot rang out, now first, this Lorraine Hotel wasn't nothing but a flop house. All this crap they talking about, it was nothing where you carried a woman and stayed a certain amount of time, and because the law said that you can't rent a hotel room out for, a few minutes. It had to be for 24 hours. So what they would do, that's long before the assassination, you would pay $10 for the room and $25 rental of the key. So knowing when you got ready to leave the room, you're going to turn the key in and get your $25 back, so they know that room was available. And so that's all it was a flop house. And behind it, it was an old trashy white flop house. Behind that, same grounds. And so what happened is we went down and we interviewed different people. There was a cab driver named, we called him cab driver 56, named was Phillips. And he said he thought it was a car backfiring. So he got out of his cab. And he said when he got out of his cab, he see this white man, jumping over this little concrete fence. And so he said he came past him, and then he followed him. He went to the corner, and he turned left and got in a Memphis police car, squad car, and left. So we had this information, and then 2 days later, Phillips ends up dead. They said he was so depressed over King being killed, because at the time he didn't know it was King, which he didn't. He didn't even know if it was a shot until he saw this white boy. He said so he was so depressed. Now, who's saying he's so depressed that he jumped off the bridge and committed suicide? Okay. Now, we keep pressing and looking, not knowing nothing about Reverend Kyles. This happened years later. Now, what Reverend Kyles would do, every April the 4th, he would hold the remembrance of King on that day. And that was his hustle. And people would come in from all over. So he would also promote it. He would leave and go to places 100-mile radius. And his thing was he was the last person to be with King alive. It was three of them, Abernathy, Kyle, and King. They had dinner together in the room. And so he's the one that told the world that he picked up the pack of cigarettes that King had. Well, those was close to a new King would smoke every now and then, but he ain't never bought a pack. He just moved him from people. So he said he has it. So then I didn't pay that much attention to it, but I realized that he was setting that up to sell it one day for big money. It's the last thing King had in his hand. He dropped it when he was shot. So now he was doing his regular hype on April the 4th, King's festivities. And so he was in he was in Jackson, Mississippi, where they had just elected the first black mayor. So James Orange, who was one of King's right-hand people, dedicated, and he was the Union Connections. So they were there for a demonstration in Jackson, not pertaining to Reverend Kyle's holding a press conference on the balcony of City Hall. So he was there, in some kind of way he slipped, and he said, I was the last person to be with King. Now, Abernathy, the story goes, he came out on the balcony, but remember, he forgot to put his aftershave lotion on. So he left to go back to get that. So then he said it was two of us on the balcony, Martin and myself. He said, I walked away so they could have a good shot, and then the shot rang out. This is insignificant of where I'm going with this, because all at once I get the young lady that was traveling with the group that came down to demonstrate. I knew her well, so she called me. And she said, Greg, you better get here quicker. You better talk to James Orange, because he's getting ready to kill Reverend Kyles. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, here, you talk to him. And he's crying. And I said, James, what's wrong, man? So he told me what Reverend Kyles said at the press conference. I said, well, do me a favor. I want you to hear me real good. I want you to go in and get the tape from the network. Now, everybody know who you are. So when you go in, just saying we planning to have a big festivity for the remembrance of the King assassination. And we pulling together film from all over the world on King. And we'd like to know if we can get that film from the press conference. And they told him, yeah. And I had told him, when you get it, call me back. So he called me back. I said, now you can kill him if you want. I just wanted the film, because once that film disappeared, nobody would ever know what happened. And so they got the film, and somebody got on the plane and flew it to me. If you pull it up, Google it, you'll hear him say, King was here, and he holds his index finger up, and he holds the other and said, I was here. Said, I walked away so they could have a clear shot. Now, had he left it at that, he could have said, well, I was talking about a photographer. But he didn't. He said, King was here, I was here, I walked away so he could have a clear shot, and then the shot rang out. Okay. Well, then, we put it up on the internet, and it just went all over the world. I mean, the people were just stunned of listening to him, and then to know he's the one that King was going by his house for dinner. Now, if we fast forward for a minute, when the King family decided to have a wrongful death trial of the white guy, who low-level mob guy, but $100,000 was sent in by the mob in New Orleans. And he's the one that made the arrangement. So the King family, which was brilliant, they suing this guy, Giles, had a little cafe there at the Flop House. For $1, all they wanted to do was have it on the record coming out of a court. And for the rest of the history of the planet, that would be documented. And so the trial started. And it's kind of interesting because I learned something I didn't know. Judge Brown, the black guy called?
Right, Joe Brown.
Joe Brown. Well, I didn't realize till listening to your show that he was a Black Panther. Okay? He was at UCLA at law school. And that's where he become a Black Panther. So I'm saying, oh, wait. No black man is going to be a Black Panther in America and end up being a judge. Huh?
1 minute.
I'm not buying that at all. And then strange things I looked at. The trial was supposed to last about 30 minutes, and then the Universal Force stepped in. And the white guy, his defense, listen to this, man. He wasn't his defense wasn't that he didn't know nothing about it, and he didn't do it. His defense was, yep, I did get $100,000 from the mobster in New Orleans.
All right, pull that thought right there, Greg.
Okay, good.
Talking about the Reverend Billy Kyle's, a name that you should know whenever you talk about the assassination of Dr. King. We're going to get to Prince next on 1450 WOL, where information is power. Thanks for rolling with us and our guest, D.Gregory, and we will get to Prince, I promise you, but this is an important piece of information that Greg is sharing with us about Billy Kyle's, the Reverend Billy Kyle's. He played a major role in the assassination of Dr. King, and he passed away in Memphis on Tuesday. So, Greg, I'm going to let you finish up about Billy Kyle's.
And so what happened now is the trial started. So Giles, the little low-level mafia guy, his defense to this day, otherwise you just see that universal. I'm not talking about the church. I'm talking about the same God that put the moon and the stars and the oceans together. Evidently, it baffled his mind. And his defense was, yes, I did get $100,000. I knew I was supposed to pick somebody to assassinate somebody. I knew that. His defense was, I didn't know it was Martin Luther King. I did all those things, but I didn't know it. So you all can't say that I put up the money through some other connections to have King killed because I didn't know that's what they was going to. That was the defense. I couldn't believe it. My child got sick, went to the hospital, and instead of the trial lasting 30 minutes, it lasted a month. They brought in Billy Kyle to testify, and they brought the film in and showed the film in court. And the world was just, now listen to this now. The whole time that trial ran, not one newspaper ran the story. The only reason that story went around the world, at the end of the trial, the King family won. And that thing hit, but nobody was able to follow that, because not even the local paper there. Okay? So now that's documented. Thank God the King family, that is documented. And just not the whole thing with Billy Kyle. You got the white boy testifying through his lawyer that he did pay $100,000 of mob money. Now that's government money funneled through the mob, and so that's how that went out, and it was just so incredible. Now let me just throw another piece in here. Lee Harvey Oswald, James L. Ray. He was caught at London Airport, Heathrow Airport, in September with a long winter coat on. Now, this is the city where you got to guard the Queen. So he's arrested. Now, that's how clever they are. He's arrested by Scotland Yard. So the whole world says Scotland Yard arrested, but he wasn't arrested for killing King. He was arrested for jailbreak. He was in the Missouri State Penitentiary in Jeff City, Missouri. Never before he escaped, and never after have anybody ever escaped from the Missouri State Penitentiary. So now, let me tell you the strange thing that happened. The guy It goes all the way back to the case where the U-2 plane was shot down.
Gary Francis Powers.
Gary Francis Powers. And the guy who, when America negotiated the number one spy in the history of the planet, was a Russian guy named Abel. We had him in jail. So they negotiated a deal. If you let Francis Powers go, then we will give you. So they had a big movie made out of it where they talk about the swap on the bridge. Well, the guy that made the swap on the bridge for America was a CIA agent who eventually became the warden of the Atlanta Federal Jail. And then from there, he became the warden of the Missouri State Penitentiary. Now, here's what went down. James L. Ray was baking bread at the prison, not just for the prisoners, but for every state agency, schools, orphan homes, whatever the state was from, for $100 raise. So they would bake the bread, put it in the bread cans, and then the guards would lift it up and put it on the truck. So one day, some white boys came to him and said, James, how would you like to escape? Now, to show you how dumb he was, he said, yeah, man, when we going? And they said, we not, you are. Now, he's that dumb to think some folks in jail want him to escape, but they're not going. So they set it up. And so the guards was loading up the bread. Now, they put him in a bread can, one of them tin cans. And them guards didn't know the difference between bread and a human body. So now he's in the truck. Truck takes off from the jail. He gets out the truck, and the truck's doing about 80 miles an hour. So he said, wow, man, I'm really in trouble. I can't jump out this truck at 80 miles an hour. So all at once the truck pulled over and came off the road in a weeded area. A weeded area. And stopped. And he get off the truck and hide in the bushes until the truck leaves. So then he walks up to the highway, and what's the guy, the white boy that played in White Man Can't Jump?
Woody Harrelson.
Harrison. Well, his daddy wasn't involved. His daddy was Raoul, one of the three tramps that was up on the viaduct shooting at President Kennedy. It was E. Howard Hunt, Frank Sturgis, and the code name for his daddy was Raoul. So he's walking down the highway, and here come Raoul driving. And he pulls over, hey, Dad, can I give you a lift? And he said, yep. So he gets in the car. And he says, what are you doing? He said, oh, nothing, just out here walking. He said, what kind of work you doing? He said, none, I'm looking for a job. He said, what kind of job you looking for? He said, anything, man. He said, well, I'm a gun runner, and we running guns from here to Canada and from Canada back here. Would you like to do that? And he said, sure. So now they set that up where he's running guns. Now, Raoul sets it up where he's going to run some guns from Memphis to Canada. Now, he don't know they setting him up to be blamed for the King assassination. And so now he picks up the guns in picks up the guns in Birmingham outside. and brings him to Memphis, where he's going to spend the night, and then the next day they're going to head to Canada. Well, a funny thing happened. He come downstairs and noticed his back tire had a slow leak in it. So he leaves to go to the filling station to get that fixed. Now, what the game was, King would be shot. Everything would stop. They would kill Oswald downstairs. Now, when they realized he wasn't there, they threw a beer can, left a beer can there with his thumbprint on it. They left a blanket there that he had, property of the Missouri State Penitentiary. And they left a portable radio that had his Missouri State Penitentiary serial number on it. That was there on the ground. And so now everybody is thinking, and Carl, one day when y'all look at this again, look at two things. King is shot. He's laying on the balcony. There's 5 people up there pointing up. How did those Negroes know it wasn't going to be another shot? Huh? How you got the beloved King on the ground and none of you is over him saying, "Are you all right, champ?" Nobody's crying. 5 people pointing the wrong way. Okay? Now, a man runs out the bathroom. It had nothing to do with the shot. The shot come from the ground. Matter of fact, me and a couple of people on the radio show interviewed the boy's brother who was one of the shooters. This was years later. And so meanwhile, he runs past this woman, Grace Stevens, snaggletooth, no educated, can't read, can't write, white woman. Been living there.
Greg, hold that thought right there, because we got to take another break. And we come back, we need to get the Prince. We need you to take us to Prince. Folks, stay tuned. We got to tell you, this is interesting information. The death of Billy Kyles, one of the major players in the assassination of Dr. King. 800-450-7876. Get you on to speak to Dick Gregory. Calls next on 1450 WOL, where information is power. Thanks for rolling with us and our guest, Dick Gregory. I just want to remind you that poli-sci Professor James Taylor is going to be with us later. We're going to talk politics. Also, the attorney at war, Alton Maddox, is going to join us in the next few days. So tell your friends to keep it locked right here on 1450 WOL. Discussing, and I promise you we're going to get to Prince. So, Greg, I need you to wrap it up about Billy Kyles.
The story that I'm about to tell you is more important than the Prince.
All right.
But we'll do that next week. I'm going to tell you a story about an old snaggletooth white woman who couldn't read or write. And when they came in there because they found out that Britain had only arrested him for jailbreak, and in order for them to bring him back for the assassination of King, this white woman had to be the one that say she saw him fire, and she didn't. Now, quickly, and we'll go into that later. So detectives came by with the FBI and told her husband, said, "Where's your new Cadillac?" He said, "What do you mean? This is common law guy." And when we checked the records, in 20 years, he had beat her up so bad, 19 times she had to go to the hospital with broken, fractured bones. This is this woman. And then when they told the husband that, his wife saw the guy that killed King and there's a reward out for like $1 million, it'd probably go up to $10 million. He said, so he went up there to get her to tell him what they wanted. And she said it wasn't him, and he beat her up there with the cops downstairs. Now, to close this, and we'll go back to it later, when the detectives came by 2 days later with the FBI, and I'm sure the CIA, and said, "Grace Stevenson, get your hat and coat." So she got it. and they drove her 40 miles away from Memphis to a mental hospital. Now, if you run the mental hospital, you're a doctor there, you would have no reason back then to believe that the FBI and homicide cops would lie on this white woman. And they said she has these hallucinations. She believes she witnessed the king killing, and she's suicidal. And they checked her in that hospital. 11 years later, me and Mark Lane and a group of people went by there to see if we could sneak her out. Y'all to hear this. I didn't go because I said to them white boys, I said, if you get caught, I'm going to be the one to get the electric chair. So when they came back and they said they walked down the walls, and we had everything. We had the blueprints. We had every brick in that place. When they slid down the wall and walked into her room and put that flashlight in her face, she thought it was them. And she said, I'm going to tell you now what I told you back then. That's not the man. And I want you black folks who think you so hip, who think you got so much going for you and think you going to heaven somewhere, think about this white woman. 11 years in a mental hospital and still said that wasn't him. Now, finally, they got the husband, after they committed her, to say he witnessed it. Then they told him how much money he was going to give, and they tell you how lucky the King family is. They never gave it to him, so he got a lawyer and filed suit. There's a suit tucked away in court where he said he lied, the cops want him to lie, and about the money they were supposed to give him. That's all. That's all. And so when y'all think y'all so hip and all you can produce is a damn football player or some athlete or some entertainer, here's a woman that under no circumstances you're looking at a redneck cracker woman, but something inside of her said, that's not the man. So y'all think about that with your little cute ass, okay?
Yeah, and again, folks, whenever just do some investigation on Billy Kyle's and his connection to Dr. King's assassination. Greg, thank you for that story. Wow, it was really, really graphic. But let's get to Prince now, because a lot of people, we told you they didn't talk about Prince, and you see a lot of inconsistencies in what's being reported in his death.
Well, first, let's look at what they told us. The news broke that Prince is dead. Not that he was sick, he was dead. And then they started putting all kind of stuff around it. First, he canceled the show, they said, in Atlanta. Then they said, well, he did 2 shows that night when he came back. And we all saw it, talking about on TV. He did 2 one-man shows. By himself, not another musician, just him. First show, then after that, did an 8 o'clock show. After the 8 o'clock, did another show. We saw, they showed the pictures of it. Now, the tabloid paper came out last night. It hit the stands tonight that Prince died from AIDS. So I said, well, wait a minute. What we've been told about AIDS and HIV, that right before you die, you're so weak. So you telling me that night, before they announced he was dead, he was in Atlanta? And they got pictures of him doing 2 shows. They talk about how good he looked and how strong he was. Now, he's on a plane flying back home. The plane makes a stop in Moline, Illinois, which is 40 miles from Chicago. So when you're in an airplane, 40 miles and 200 miles is the same. Why didn't they take that plane to Chicago, where they had top hospitals and top doctors, And how did they know about that hospital? Huh? So now they land the plane, take him to the hospital. They let him go. They said, we don't have a private room. Now, two, if he's that sick, then why wasn't he traveling with somebody? How come we haven't heard who he was traveling with to the hospital? How come we haven't heard who came back home with him from the hospital? Now, let's look at this real good. The next day after we announced he's dead, and they announced that he had stopped at the hospital, how come there wasn't press people from all over the world in that little town trying to get an interview? Even if people didn't want to talk, they would be there. And how come somebody didn't go and make sure the hospital didn't give him the wrong medicine? When you think about malpractice, how come that never happened? Now, how come we don't know nothing about that hospital? We don't know if he was ever in there or not. Now, let's look at the plane. Now, I called a friend of mine. And I said, what kind of information you got on the plane? I'd like to know the movements. And if I can't come there, I'll send somebody over to Europe to get it. Well, here's what happened. If you look at the plane, erratic, how fast it was making a dive. How fast? Well, why wouldn't somebody assume that it's terrorists? Why wouldn't somebody alert airports all over the world that something's happening, even if they didn't know? Let me tell you something now. If a plane had to make an emergency stop, the newspapers have it the next day. We ain't knew nothing about that plane until somebody told us, and it wasn't the press. So now, when I look at the way that plane, it leads me to believe something happened on that plane. Now, I don't know if he was killed. I would assume he was. When you look at the way that plane was moving and shaking, and then the fact that it was never reported. Nobody ever assumed with the government or around the world that it could be a skyjacking going on, and we don't know if it's one person or if this is a thing where it's going to be 100 different people. None of that was ever reported. So now he's home. The next day they say they see him riding his bicycle outside the compound. Okay, do that sound like somebody that was so sick you had to make a stop on an airplane to take him to a hospital? And the next day he's riding his bicycle? Not in the compound, but outside. Yeah. And so we checked some other things. The mayor of the town, he is probably one of the biggest human beings on the world, PR-wise. The mayor said he never met him. You know how much money he brought to that little town? You know how much publicity he brought to that little town? None of the stuff they telling us is making sense. And then when they come out with the AIDS piece, huh? And then 2 days later he dead, and now they saying it was AIDS, it was that. They said, oh, they might have gave him a shot. Well, they might have gave him the wrong shot. Nobody's checking that. And then all at once now, they tell us he's dead, so I called a friend of mine in another country, and I said, now, when a person like Prince died, and people all over the world going to run to buy records, how many weeks do you have to have ahead of time to stack up those stores with records? Now, we noticed, we thought people were buying his records all over the world, and we didn't have nobody say, we went into the record shop and there wasn't none there. How did somebody know to stack those records? Stores are all over the world before something like this happened. And so then when you sit and you look at we found out that they cremated him before they gave him the autopsy. I know that, but the New York Times don't know it, okay? Now, his sister okayed it, so she needs to be talked to. Who are you? And then the one that's just outrageous. Say this is one of the brilliant minds in the world. But so stupid he didn't have a will? Huh? Listen to me now. I said, oh, he's a private person. He was private. He had a bicycle. He didn't make that. Huh? He had a piano. He didn't make that. He wrote his music on paper. He didn't make that. So you telling me that he did not have a will, and as brilliant as we know he was, that means everything he left there goes to probate? Huh? You got old black folks, man, ain't never been to school. Have their cousin or somebody come out of high school and write up a will, and all you got to do is get it notarized. What was the woman in New York City, the billionaire woman? Hated her family so bad, she left her $1 billion to the dog.
Yeah, hang on a sec, Greg. We got to take another break here. Folks, I'll tell you, Greg says there's a lot of inconsistencies surrounding the death of Prince. What are your thoughts? 800-450-7876. Come back with Dick Gregory next on 1450 WOL, where information is power. So we're going to get to Palestine Professor James Lance Taylor momentarily, but we're still with Dick Gregory, pointing out some discrepancies in the death of Prince. Greg, I'm going to let you finish up what you were saying before we left for the break.
Well, I'm just saying that, that here's this brilliant mind, and if he hated everybody in the family, you still leave a will, leave it to a tree, leave it to a house to be maintained. Why is there no will? Which means everything he has now goes into probate. I'm not about to buy that, and that's the way they do. I never.
Well, good. Let me interrupt and ask you. Tell you that. Have you heard the latest? There's some guy who came out says Prince is his daddy, but he was a product of a one-night stand with his mom and Prince. So he's throwing his hat in the ring to get some of that cash as well.
Yeah. Well, trust me, if there's no will, it goes into probate. Okay. All right. You're dealing with the state. You're not dealing with some punks in the street. You think that billionaire white woman that owned all them major hotels, you think she didn't know if she didn't want them people to get that money, she'd give it to her dog? And so again, I'm saying you have all kind of people that be coming out saying stuff, huh? And some of the people that will be saying it will be government agents or the people that killed him, huh? But then we go back, that's where we need Sister Francis Wells, to talk about. When you go into one of them major record companies and look that white boy in the face, and you got a sign on your cheek talking about slave, huh? Well, them type of white folk, they don't worry about making noise and hollering and screaming, we're going to get you. They just assume then, okay? It don't make no difference if you do it this year, next year, 10 years. That's white supremacy. Okay? That's what that's about.
Wow. Hang on a sec. Terry in Columbus, Ohio, got a question for you.
Yes.
On line one. Terry, you got a question for Dick Gregory?
Yes, I do.
God bless you, Terry. You and the family.
Yes, sir. God bless you, too. It's my third time talking to you. Every time you're on, I make sure to give you a call, and I make sure I'm also going to be in D.C. To see you at the rally. Yes, sir, at the church.
Good.
And also, I got a chance to see your nephew or a young man named Mark Gregory a couple nights ago here in Columbus, Ohio. He did a great job.
Yeah, good comment.
I didn't know he was a relative of yours. So I definitely got a chance to check him out. I'm a huge Prince fan, and like I said last time, he performed on the night I was born. So I've always loved him a lot.
Right.
Do you see any connection in his death and Michael's, in the sense of, he just got his masters back from Warner Brothers a couple years ago, and how Michael had the dispute with Sony and all that. Do you see any correlation?
Well, if you go back to Clyde Davis, and you look at Clyde Davis, Michael, Prince, and Whitney Houston, Clyde Davis was involved with all of them. Sure, there are connections.
Okay.
But I'm talking about the obvious connections that don't make sense.
And there's a strong possibility, too, that these record companies or the intelligence agencies could just pay off some of these dirty cops to, make the evidence.
Well, see, now what you're doing, you stretching it. You taking it from, he did 2 shows, huh? 2 shows. We know he did 2 shows by himself. We saw the film. Then they said, a couple of days later, he died. Now you stretching it from there to paying off dirty cops? Huh? We're not speculating. We talking about stuff we see. We talking about there is no will. So now we're going to throw a dirty cop in? And all of that? I'm talking about stuff that you can see. I'm talking about folks that's listening to this show that ain't had a lick of education, but they got a will. Huh?
Right.
And then, so you bring up the fact, well, how come he didn't have one? Huh? That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And maybe the people they used to kill him, maybe they already dead. Huh? What's the game? Thank you, brother.
All right, thank you, Terry. Interesting. So Greg, how do you see this going forward right now? Because you know that they're going to try, the Inquirer, as you said, and you might as well give the audience a little background on the National Enquirer, saying claiming that he had HIV/AIDS.
Well, first, the Inquirer is CIA. Okay, the Globe is CIA. Call right down there where you live. Before we heard of Amflax being put on them black folks in D.C. at the post office, the first Amtrak flipped the world at the Globe headquarters in Fort Lauderdale, remember?
Right.
And the headquarters is still closed and quarantined. Huh? So this is what they do. And they do the whole mind flip. The whole mind flip. But there's more stuff beginning to come out now because of shows like this, because of all these internet shows, huh? Things is beginning to come. You make one phone call, and, hey, I need to know this here. I'll call you right back, huh? That's where we are. All this stuff we talking about, NBC can't figure this out. ABC can't figure this out. No. I don't know where to go. They've already done what they want to do, huh? They've already done. He's dead, okay? No will. We got what we want. So y'all can sit and talk about it and blame anybody you want to blame for it. He's dead. And all of that stuff that he left. I mean, if you got that kind of money, why wouldn't you leave the money for the upkeep? They said he got records. He did so many records. For the next 100 and some years, he can bring out one every day. Well, how come you didn't leave an overseer of that to make sure that the temperature's right, to make sure that the heat and the cold don't mess up that prop? How come you didn't do that? No, it's a whole lot of stuff. But the main thing is, it's over. I mean, they got him. And the rest of y'all that think y'all gonna come in here and tell us what to do, it ain't the first time that something like this happened. Cook? What's his first name?
Sam Cooke?
Sam Cooke, same thing. And they made like it was some transvestite and some woman that got into a fight and all of that. And then you had, what's it, sitting on the dock of the bay, what's his name?
Otis Redding.
Otis Redding said that the white folks will no longer control black music. In another week, my partner will be ready, and 3 days later, he died in a plane wreck. So this ain't the first time. This is go on, and a lot of stuff go on we don't even know about. Huh? This is the game. What's his name that owned Beach Nut Baby Food? You remember the guy?
No, I don't know who owns that.
Yeah, come on, you know him. You know him, the guy.
I probably know Can't make the connection.
The guy from Baltimore.
Oh, you're talking about Reggie Lewis.
Reggie Lewis. Now let me tell you a story. They announced Reggie Lewis. You knew he owned Beech-Nut baby food, huh? Did you know that? He bought it.
No, I know he owned a lot of stuff, but go ahead.
No, well, he did not own Beech-Nut baby food. He owned Beech-Nut baby food International. That's third world, okay? $6 billion. So when me and my friend check it out, just his credit. 6 months before he bought Beech-Nut baby food International, he was turned down for a Rolls Royce because of bad credit. Now 6 months later, he got $6 billion somewhere to buy International. So do you know International's third world? Do you know most of those folks don't even know he dead? Huh? So what kind of poison they putting in the food to poison the third world? Because they think a brother owned it. Okay, that's who they dealing with. And I listen y'all talk on this radio show and talk about this here. Like real white folk don't exist? Huh? Real white folk don't exist? Yesterday somebody said, well, we need to have us another Little Wall Street. You didn't see racism? You know what happened with Little Wall Street? So brother hooked up with Chinese, Native Americans, huh? And put this company together, and he alone was doing $100,000 a week, huh? And then all it was, these crackers came to him. They said, we'd like to be part of that. He said, no, white folk can't be in this. And then the next day, the planes came by and dropped them bombs. So when you go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to go to the newspaper, there's a big hole in the newspaper. You think rednecks did that? Huh? You think redneck, ignorant crackers have that much control over the paper they can do that? And let me tell you what happened. When the mess hit with the Oklahoma Federal Building, well, now you got black folks. When that happened, no black folks in the state legislature. So now you got black folks in the legislature, and the white folks will say, oh, this is the worst act of terrorism in the history of America. And the black state legislature, no. What about Little Wall Street? White folks didn't know nothing about it.
All right. Greg, we gotta let you go because we gotta run. We gotta take a traffic break. But thank you for that information about Prince and also